So, Phil, I want to talk about this Dark Knight conversation that Morrow had mentioned on Blogatalk. Have you heard any of the discourse on this?
Use me as the foil for the rest of the people listening that have not.
Sure. So, one of the things he said on Blogatalk was basically like every Magic player goes through what he calls the Dark Knight. Knight, not Knight like Batman, but like the Dark Knight, the darkest time in their Magic career. And each time they face a dark Knight event, think of it as like a what's that word I'm looking for? A singularity in a Magic player's life. They basically decide whether or not they're going to keep interacting with the game, right? And the more of these Dark Knight events that come, the more likely they are to quit the game or not interact with it in the way that they prefer to, right? We have several of these in our careers as Magic players. And for Morrow, his Dark Knight event was like having to accept Commander as a thing that people were doing and that had become the most popular part of the game. And it became, and here's the thing. Is reading this article, he says like, it was part of my job, so I bared down and I figured it out and I saw how much joy, blah, blah. The thing is like, I'm not Morrow. I'm not being paid to play Magic the Gathering or to like design for it. So I don't, that his experience is going to vary, right? Like, we don't play Magic the Gathering for our livelihoods. So we don't have to accept that like, okay, I guess Commander's the thing. I have to deal with it, whereas he kind of does, right?
We don't play it for our livelihoods yet, but eventually when Eternal Dirtles is our full time, we'll be right there along with you, Morrow.
Of course. But I think I want to start by saying like I genuinely love Mark Rosewater. I think he does an amazing work for the game, and I think that if there was another, if he wasn't there, the stewardship of the game would be even much worse than it is now. I think he's very open about his experience with the game and about design, and maybe shares some stuff he's not really supposed to. But I think it's a boon for the community to have a person like that as a spokesman for the game. So I don't want any of this to be like, fuck you, Morrow, like whatever. Like that's not where I'm coming from with this. But I think that it's interesting, the concept of like a player's Dark Knight, a player's moment that they like have to interact with the game in a way that is different from what their expectations are and their wants as opposed to their needs for the game, right? I would say I can pick out off the top of my head like a couple Dark Knight moments for you, Phil. Sensei's Divining Top being banned. That was a moment where you had to decide, like, is this what I want to keep doing? That sort of thing. They're not, every event is a tick, right? It's this like moment where like, butterfly effect. Do I stay in the game? Do I leave? Do I interact with it differently? You could have seen Sensei's Divining Top get banned, and instead of being like, well, I'm just going to keep playing Miracles, you could have been like, well, it's legal in Vintage. I guess that's who I'll be now. Or I guess I can play it in Commander, so that's who I'm going to be now. You kept playing Legacy. So to me, the concept of like a player's Dark Knight, there are several in my background, where I just thought it would be interesting if both of us went through our Magic career and talked about different moments that you could consider our Dark Knight moments. Finding the right high-end cards for Legacy, Vintage, Pre-Modern, or Old School Magic can be challenging. That's where a friend's 3-for-1 trading come in.
3-for-1 Trading is one of Europe's top Magic the Gathering retailers with an incredible selection of premium singles, sealed product, and even full sets, all available with free, fast, and secure worldwide shipping.
They add fresh inventory every Wednesday with weekly deals and discounts. So whether you're hunting for that elusive piece of power, a Legacy staple, or something spicy for your collection, they've got you covered.
First high-end orders over $500 or 500 euros, use the code EDFREE to get free worldwide shipping.
Check them out now at the number 3, the number 4, the number 1.gg/ED. That link takes you right to the shop and helps support the channel.
Huge thanks to 3-for-1 Trading for supporting the Legacy community. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I think that there was a time, I want to say, year and a half ago, 2 years ago, probably 2 years ago, where I remember saying that, like, it was essentially the episode where we were talking about, like, take breaks. Like, it is healthy to take breaks. Take breaks. If you're not having fun, take a break. You don't need to sell out of your collection just yet. You don't need to do all that stuff. But I remember being like, take a break. And I did that. And then when I came back, I, like, felt refreshed because I wasn't so sour at, like, the consistent experience of the things that like ruined games for me or like ruined experiences for me. And so like going away for a little bit, you sort of remember, like, I feel like I started to, and I imagine most other players would too, you start to remember the joyous things that about the game Whereas when you're really, really, really in the rigors of it, you're only seeing the stuff that is ruining games for you. So like I was only running into like Teferi and Cavern of Souls and Bowmaster and like all this shit that was just, or in Urza Saga, where I was like, every game is just like these single individual things that are just ruining the experience for me. I need to take a break. And then when I like, was gone for, it wasn't very long, but it was like, I want to say it was like a month and a half, 2 months where I like just didn't do anything Magic related outside of the like keeping tabs for the podcast, where I was like, oh, I actually really miss doing, all the things that I thought I could do rather than what my opponents were doing to make it, not great. So that then brought me back in, and then I had this renewed vigor. So I think that that's good. And a lot of the times when I'm thinking about why, like, oh, should I stop interacting with the game? A lot of it is really like, do I stop interacting with Hasbro?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's less so the game, because when pre-modern comes around, that's always been great. So I think that like it's the Dark Knight moments come from putting in a lot of effort. Like there was a Dark Knight moment in round 2 of the Legacy Eternal Weekend this year. There was like,
Sure.
I literally wrote in my notes after just like, getting bodied in non-games for the second time against a Bowmaster deck, where I was just like, maybe it's time to just sell out of this thing and just play the formats that are actually fun. But then, like had a second, looked inward for a moment, took a deep breath, recognized that it's not a big deal, and then played the rest of the tournament, and it was fine. But like, we were cusping on that. But tell me, what's the one that's most recent for you, Zach?
Well, I think it would be more interesting for me to start at my beginning of my Magic career and move forward, right? And I want to do that with you as well. And what we'll do is we'll work in time, right? Like we'll start with me. I started a bit before you, and then once you come into the picture, we'll talk about and we'll see that cadence as they become, I think, more frequent. Off my guess. So when I started Magic in 1995, I don't think I had a Dark Knight moment until I got banned in 1999. That would be a pretty Dark Knight moment for me, I think. The game had become a social nightmare for me. And between like kind of being bullied and being like a dumb teenager, that put me in a situation where I couldn't play the game for about 5 years. And I pretty much assumed that was it for me. I wasn't probably going to play the game anymore. So there's that first Dark Knight moment. Then I surprisingly I came back to the game in about 2006 when like Magic Online had started coming on, and I played for a little while on Magic Online, but realized like it was a little too expensive for me at the time to like try and rebuy in. So I played occasionally, but I didn't get too involved in it. And I don't think that there was a Dark Knight moment for me there specifically. It was just, the game was not in my lifestyle at that time. Then in 2008, I came back to the game, living in New York. And in 2008, I was working at what I would consider at the time for a 28-year-old guy, a pretty cool job. I worked as a consultant in the fashion industry for photographers. So I would help photographers get work. Pretty cool job. Definitely one of those jobs where you're on a date and you tell someone what you do and they're like kind of impressed, that sort of thing. And so, I hadn't been nerdy for, I don't know, like a while, because I was a bartender, like in like 2003. So 2008, 5 years later, I'm feeling like a jock, And so I went to Neutral Ground because Neutral Ground was still open at the time. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to play some Magic. I built a Pickles deck and was like, I'm going to play in a local, and I sat down and all I did, I played Standard, and I went into this room at Neutral Ground. Neutral Ground, really cool Magic spot. Storied history of that place. BDM played there. Flores played there. A lot of my friends now used to play there back in the day, but the place stunk. The place was like just, geeky dude BO and kids kind of stink a little bit too. So I went in there and I'm like, I'm 28-year-old guy. The career's going well. Things are going good with ladies, that kind of thing. And I go into this place and I feel absolutely uncool. It's the nightmare for anyone trying to teach someone Magic, is like you bring them to a place like that and they don't see the game. They see what's going on outside of the game. And it's just like, not great, right? So I got bodied by like 3 12-year-olds in a row on top of that. So not only did I not feel cool, I was not winning. They were playing like
Gotta play
aggro
around.
decks. I was not playing aggro decks, and I was like, okay, this isn't for me. I don't feel cool. Whatever, right? So that was my second Dark Knight moment was 2008, right? So we've had 2 Dark Knight moments in about 10 years, right? Then in 2012, I wandered into 20 Side Store on their 1-year anniversary, and I looked. I was gonna get some D&D stuff because I was playing D&D with some friends of mine. And I said, hey, what's going on in the background there? And they were playing Magic. And the owner, Luis, was like, hey, yeah, we're celebrating our 1-year anniversary. We're playing Magic tonight. And I was like, adults do this? And it looked like, cool-ish people, adults of my age, people who like I would consider hanging out with, right? And I was like, I'm in, right? Sell me cards, right? So from 2012 to I want to say 2000 and maybe 15 or 16, I was playing Magic. I was just in there doing it. It was the thing to do every Tuesday, every Monday. I was playing like 3 or 4 times a week. My next Dark Knight moment came when 20 Side Store stopped doing legacy events. They like had a flood or something, and then they just stopped doing Magic events. My LGS closed, basically, for me. They started doing events again, but for the events that I liked to play, Legacy, Standard, and Modern at the time, they kind of stopped doing that stuff, and they only did Draft, and they got rid of all their singles, so it was impossible for me to even get singles outside of TCG Player. So I still played, and I would occasionally take a train or take a car up to Game Storia to play, but I wasn't getting in the kind of Magic that I wanted to. In fact, I was still playing every Thursday night at Nebulous with some friends, but I wasn't getting in the kind of Magic I wanted, and that was a Dark Knight moment for me. I could have quit there and stopped, and I was like, no, I'll just keep doing the thing. And I think by that time, we were doing the podcast. So that was a Dark Knight moment for me. So that's 2015. So 2008, 1999 and 2015. You've begun playing since then, so let's talk about your experience. Eternal Dirtles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield. Moxfield is the best Magic the Gathering deck building website on the internet. You can create, share, and find decks from Commander to Legacy, and even fan-supported formats like Pre-Modern and Old School. You can see all of our decks on our Moxfield. Follow the links below to stay tuned.
So I started in 2007, 2008, and it was when I first got to Syracuse, which has a really large card playing community with like a lot of different shops. Between, at the time, it was Play the Game, Read the Story, Cloud City. There was a bunch of like very well known shops in that area, and I grew up collecting Pokemon cards, and then as a kid I played Yu-Gi-Oh! And then once Yu-Gi-Oh! Got to the point where they just decided to break their game system, and also I was old enough to understand when like
you had your Dark Knight moment for Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah, I had my Dark Knight moment once I recognized that like they just kept power creeping stamped archetypes, and by stamped I mean like cards that only work with very specific other cards that share a name with each other. So it was like
design,
Gravekeepers and Six Samurai and like all this stuff where it's like if you wanted to play something, they just essentially pre-conned you a deck.
Yeah, Exodia as they say, right?
Yeah. But then it was like approximately around like X Sabers and Synchro, where it was like they just power crept a new precon in the game that was like, okay, I don't want to have to keep changing this thing. I don't feel like I can express myself creatively in deck design anymore because they're just pre-conning stuff to me, and it's so tight and the game is getting faster, and I just wasn't having fun with it anymore. And at the time, it was at Play the Game, Read the Story, where I was playing the local scene for Yu-Gi-Oh! There were people who played both Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic, and they were like, Phil, we recognize, like, we see what you do in this game. We think that you would really like Magic a lot more, and you should give it a try. And I always thought that Magic was sort of, at the time, I mean, I knew it. There were card players at the shop. Like, I saw the game. I knew the game. But I thought it was sort of, like, overwhelming. Like, I was like, this game's been out for way too long. How am I ever going to, understand it or get into it or whatever? And they were like, it's worth the deep dive, dude.
So you started by having a Dark Knight moment.
Yeah, they were friends of mine, and I was also like, I don't know the game all that well. I don't know the cards, and they were like, I don't know, like, I'm not going to like spend all this money getting into it. They're like, dude, we play both games. We will sell you like stuff to play Magic for your Yu-Gi-Oh cards. So I essentially like traded my Yu-Gi-Oh collection for an initial Magic collection, and got in on that. And I started playing Mono Black Vampires in Standard as like a baseline, just to like understand the thing. And then once I understood the concept, like in Yu-Gi-Oh, because there's no resource system. everything is free and everything's broken. And so drawing a card when you have omniscience in play at all times is crazy, right? So I knew draw a card to be busted. And so in the first pack I ever cracked, I opened a Jace Beleren, the 3-mana Jace, and it just said, draw a card on it. And I was like, what the fuck is going on?
And yeah.
What's that? I was like,
you were like, and I'm in.
This is crazy. This must be the best thing to be doing. It says draw a card on it. So from there, I was like, okay, so now I just need to figure out all the different ways that I can ensure that I have this on the table to draw a card as much as I can. I was like, well, I know that putting more lands into play is good in this game because the game cares about lands, right? That was as far as that concept went. And then I was like, and then if I draw cards, drawing cards is broken. That's the best thing to do. So after I went into Mono Black Vampires, I put together what was essentially Jace Beleren Sun Titan shenanigans with like ramp, where I was like, the only thing that matters is if I put Jace Beleren into play. And so I was like, Sun Titan is just more Jace Belerens after I've ticked him down and drawn cards. And I had a sick play where I had a come to Jesus moment where I was playing against a person who was on like Vengevine aggro or whatever. And I had a couple of forests and a plains up. And he was like, cast this spell. And I was like, I'm going to cast Harrow. Get 2 islands, mana leak that thing. And he was like, what the fuck is going on? And I was like, I'm having a great time. So after that, I got into Legacy with via Merfolk, as is everybody's intro deck. Realized I didn't like the being at the mercy of like the better decks, essentially. And also graduated to the point where I understood what was going on. Like now I know. Now I had a sort of come to Jesus moment of like, what am I going to do now? So I was close friends with Bryant Cook and Royce Walter, the 2 best Storm players on the planet. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a Storm bro. We traveled all these events together. They know they're the best Storm guys in the world. I want to be one of the best Storm guys in the world. So I sold Merfolk, picked up Storm, and then continuously had no idea what I was doing. So I had a come to Jesus moment of like, what am I going to do now? I can't be a Storm bro. I'm getting,
now, these come to Jesus moments were not Dark Knights, though.
They were not Dark Knights yet. Not Dark Knights yet. And then I swapped Storm into Miracles when I saw Miracles at a thing. If you want, you can actually go to the epicstorm.com where there's like an old interview that I did on there where I like write out that story. It's a very fun read, like just going through like my origin story of finding Miracles. And then I had a come to Jesus, a Dark Knight moment, certainly when it was probably like right before the top ban, actually. It wasn't the top ban. There was a time where I was playing various other decks because I didn't think that I was good enough with Miracles. I had like the Dunning-Kruger problem where I was like, I was good and I understood it and I knew it, but for some reason I didn't think that I was good as like some of the best players that were on Miracles. And there was a lot of good players on Miracles.
Yeah,
and so I had
the
like
Oarsman, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so it was like, Anurag was on it, Sam was on it. There was a couple of other guys that were always at the top tables, and we were all in like the, groups, like figuring out the decks or whatever. And like my thought process on like where it was at was just different from everybody else's. Like my ideas just weren't lining up with everybody else's ideas. And I was like, am I doing something incorrectly here? Like my experience is not showing what they're saying. And, I had like, it wasn't a Dark Knight like I'm going to get out of the game, but it was a Dark Knight of like, I'm going to get out of this thing that I've been like practicing really hard for and like was really committed to. And then I was like, wait a minute, but if I can't do it with something that I like really like and really enjoy, am I doing like essentially it was like during college years, like right after college, like I'm like trying to figure out what I want to do, who I am, like all this stuff. And it's like the game is like representative of like your journey like in life as you progress, and you evolve and learn and and so I remember just being like, what am I doing? Like, how do I do this? Like, am I thinking about the world wrong? Like, if I can't even figure this shit out, like what's going on? And then once I like, came down and understood that it's like, no, it's okay. Like I had some people that were like, dude, some people are scientists and some people are artists, and it's okay to be the artist. Like the scientists will probably have better results, like because they will clinically be able to prove or disprove something. Whereas like the artist is trying to like, it was that debate. And I was like, at the time I was studying theater, so like I was in that headspace, and so like that like really brought me back around. And so like I got out of that Dark Knight moment right into a Sensei's top ban. And I was like, oh my god,
that's about at 2015, right? When did Top get banned?
Top got banned in 2017.
2017. Okay, great. So yeah, and that brings us to the present with my story. And it's at about that time, maybe like a year or two later, that there was a falling out with Hipsters of the Coast, and that was for me like a huge Dark Knight moment where I didn't know really what I was going to do. I didn't know
for anybody that doesn't know, Zac is the founder of Hipsters of the Coast.
Yeah, and so when that went kind of haywire, I had to reevaluate my entire relationship with the game, with the people that I knew as friends, with, with future relationships, people that I did content with and stuff like that too, so that was all very, very stressful to me. And I think a lesser version of me that wasn't as mature would have either crashed really heavily or maybe just quit the game and moved in.
Approximately around the same time, it was right around then that I was working at a cocktail lounge as a line cook, and I was listening to, like, during prep or during breakdown or whatever, I would just pop in my headphones and like listen to Nerd Card podcasts, and I would listen to you and Nate. And there was one episode where you were just like, Nate's not around today, but I want to get content up. So you just like were like, so I'm going to go solo this episode. And we weren't like super close at the time, but we knew each other. Like we were in this like the same circle of like the Magic community in New York. So we obviously weren't as close then, but we were close enough that I felt comfortable to be like, yo, dude, if you ever have to talk into the void like that again, just fucking give me a call. Like I'll do the episodes where Nate can't come in for you. I'll sub in. Like that. I was like, I like listening to you guys, your podcast. I liked listening to Eternal Dodos before I was part of it, and I was like, dude, like you don't have to do that. You got a community around you. And so he was like, yeah, do you want to come on next week? And then Zach was like, hey, that was fun doing 3 of us. Do you want to come on next week? And then so for a couple weeks, and then you and Nate were like, hey, it's probably better if like, the 3 of us do it, because then
all 3 of us,
because then if one of us has to be out, at least then 2 of us can like continue making content for each other. So we'd like tag team it. So it was right around that same time. I think it was slightly after the hipsters fallout. Maybe it was a little bit before.
It was a little bit before, because I remember talking to both you and Nate about like what had happened.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was I would say that was my brightest day after the darkest night situation was like having you join the show. Okay, so that's there. I weathered that, and then the pandemic happened. And
I have a moment right before that.
Oh yeah, please.
There was a time, it was during, I think it was either GP Niagara Falls or SEG Niagara Falls. And then there was also one in Tacoma. It was GP Tacoma. It was West Coast. I remember I was between jobs. So I was just like doing gig work where I could get it. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I have no future in this game. Like I will never actually be a competitively viable player. So I like made excuses as to why like I couldn't go to the Seattle Grand Prix. And then I remember afterwards that I regretted not going just because of like my friends all went, and I like heard the stories of like how great of a time it was. And I should have gone and didn't go because I like felt like I just didn't have a place in the game. But I obviously had, a place amongst my friends. And so I like prioritized how I didn't feel like I had a place in the competitive scene at the top tables. Like I just didn't think I was good enough of a player versus like the gathering side of it. And so that was like sort of a dark night moment where I was like, I'm not going to this GP. I'm not spending all this money just to feel shitty in the 06 bracket. Like I'm not doing that anymore. I'm done. I'm not traveling for events. And then like I was in the group chats where everybody's like talking to each other during the event. So I'm like seeing a play-by-play of the event that I'm not at still. And I was like, oh man, like I wish I was there. Like
the
all
FOMO
that stuff.
is like, real. Yeah.
It was a combination of FOMO, and then it was like, but it also was invigorating to come back in after seeing that, where I was like, man, I really wanted to go. And also, there are players that are playing the approximate same 75 at that point in time that I was playing, and I was like, if they're doing well, why aren't I doing well? It must be me. Like it must be like me not doing something correctly. Let me look at how to solve that or how to improve upon that. And that was a shift. So there was a dark night right before the GP into I'm back in right after the GP, but it had for totally different reasons.
I failed to remember that I in between the 2012 and 2015 Dark Knight that I had where the LGS stopped doing events. I had another Dark Knight in there. It was Thero Standard. It's the Dark Knight that got me to stop playing Standard. I was like, this is a waste of money. The market is insane. We're like, I forget what is it, Dusk Mantle Veil or whatever. The like Dusk Mantle Spectre or whatever. It was a bulk rare and then became a $50 card overnight and then went back down to bulk. And I was like, I can't afford to mess around with this stuff. Like it's too much. It's ridiculous. I'm done. I had a full legitimate Dark Knight that ended with the sun never coming up for standard. I stopped playing standard at that point.
I had there was like at the same time, right? Like before the COVID stuff, I had a Dark Knight when I was working at WWE. It was a looser Dark Knight. It wasn't like a Dark Knight like, oh, like I'm done with this game, I don't like it anymore. It was a Dark Knight in that I was like, I don't know if I'm ever actually going to get to play anymore, because the work-life balance with WWE didn't exist. Your entire life was essentially committed to that, because I was on the road. I was traveling every weekend. When I was back, I was so exhausted that I would like try and recover as much as I could before going back to work. Like there was no life in the work-life balance. And so, but at the time I was like, this job is like, I've always wanted a job like this, doing in wrestling, which is a thing that I grew up on. I love this shit. Like I was like, this is, hopefully like I can endure this. It will become a long career. And so there was a point where I was like, I haven't played Magic in so long, and I don't know if I'm ever going to, if I'm going to continue working here, which is the like hope. So I like sort of, I didn't have a whole Dark Knight moment of like, oh no, I don't like this game anymore. I had a Dark Knight moment of, oh, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to play this game anymore, assuming that I have a career here. And then that didn't last very long because I got injured, and then they let me go because they needed somebody on the road and I couldn't fly. I got a blood clot, so I couldn't fly anymore. So I like got back into it. But there was a moment where I was like, oh, maybe I should sell my collection because I'm never going to get to play again. That was very naive and short-sighted, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. Sometimes your job takes over. I get that. All right, so I have the standard Dark Knight. Then a couple, like, it's a little bit before the pandemic. There was an SCG con in Philly. It was like Modern, and I played. And I hadn't played Modern because my local didn't have like a Modern anymore. So I hadn't played Modern in about a year. And I had been doing really well for a while, about a year prior, with like Scape Shift. I was like crushing people with Scape Shift. I top 8'd a couple events, and I still had this Pro Tour dream in my head that was like, I could make the Pro Tour off of Modern, maybe not standard, but Modern or limited, we'll see. And that event, I just got so unbelievably crushed by like Tron player after Tron player after Tron player after Tron player that I decided that was my darkest night for Modern, and I'm kind of done with Modern. Sold out of Modern. I sold all of my Modern stuff for Legacy stuff, and just decided like, that's it for me. No more Modern for me. I guess the only way I'll get to the Pro Tour is either through a limited Grand Prix or through a Legacy Grand Prix. Maybe I'll pick up a Modern deck for a Grand Prix. Maybe I'll pick up a standard deck for a Grand Prix, but for the most part, I'm not like going to Pro Tour qualifiers anymore, right? That was my darkest night moment for that style of play for me, right? Then the pandemic happened, Phil. And I had just picked up Pioneer because I was like, this looks like a new and interesting format.
I played at my Pioneer local, my weekly Pioneer local. It was on Tuesday, so it didn't conflict with Legacy. Yeah. I went every week. The format was awesome. I remember we were doing episodes. We were like, this could be what eventually I think became pre-modern for us, like the Legacy alternative thing. Like there was this like new engaging format that was like just different in its gameplay. I distinctly remember us having episodes where I was like, dude, when fetch lands aren't in the format, it is an entirely different game. It feels wholly different and refreshing. And I distinctly remember that, how much fun Pioneer was at the time and how much space I thought there was to play in, because there was like this whole new dynamic where you didn't have fetch lands, making it so that your mana base was always just whatever you wanted it to be. Like you had to take considerations and think about all the different levels, which was really refreshing. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got really involved in Pioneer, and remember, 2020 was supposed to be the year of Pioneer for Magic the Gathering Grand Prix. There were like 6 Grand Prix on the list. It was going to be.
We were hungry for it.
Yeah, I had decks. I had like 7 decks ready for Pioneer. I still have a spot on my card catalog that is for Pioneer deck building.
Dude, I remember Arclight Phoenix was one of the best decks, and I remember thinking to myself, I was like, everybody's doing it wrong. Everybody was like, I'm trying to Arclight Phoenix you, and I was like, no, you're a control deck that happens to Arclight. Yeah. So I was on like Brazen Borrowers and Bone Crusher Giants and Royal Scions, and I just remember being like, I'm thicker, I'm bigger, I'm more controlling, and I still get to Arclight, and I'm better than all of these other Arclight decks. And I just remember feeling like I felt like I was in the pocket, right? I was like so ready for those Grand Prix because I was like, I'm in the pocket of this shit, I'm ready to take it down. And then the world ended.
Yep. Yeah. So the pandemic, and then they killed Grand Prix, Phil.
Yep.
That was the darkest night for me. They removed Planeswalker points as a thing. right afterwards, so that the Grand Prix buy system that like made you want to grind at locals also went away. So I had no reason to go to locals. Now, not that I could because the pandemic happened, right? But like, so now they killed the reasons to go to locals because there's no more Planeswalker points, so there's no reason for me to grind at locals. There's no Grand Prix, so there's no buys to be had for anything anyhow. And then they killed an entire format. They don't even talk about Pioneer that much anymore. You know, they killed an entire format, another Dark Knight for me, because I was super interested in this format, right?
Do you remember the format, if I can remember correctly, Frontier?
Yeah, well, that was pre-Pioneer. Like, that was a Harry Uria version of that. And I didn't play it because I was like, this is bullshit. Like, this is just a store trying to prop the market up so that, like, Sphinx's Revelations will cost 20.
I would have happily paid.
But yeah, I mean, so I got, like I said, I got in early on Pioneer, and then it died like in my hands. Like I watched it like just like fall through the cracks. And so that was another Darkest Night moment for me, in that I was like, I don't think at this point, Phil, I think the Pro Tour dream is dead. Like for me, you know, I don't think that at that point, I was like, there's no path for the Pro Tour for me. There's no situation where I will organically want to join a tournament has a feed into the Pro Tour. There's no legacy tournaments that do that. Certainly no vintage tournaments that do that. Certainly no pre-modern. Now, I had been playing pre-modern for a while. Certainly no pre-modern tournaments that did that. So that was a Darkest Night moment for me, where I was like, the Pro Tour dream is dead. What am I doing here? Right? And now within that, you have like they come faster. It's like flicker, 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 flicker. You know, for those of you who are Wheel of Time fans, you know what I'm talking about. So flicker again. Then Commander starts getting pushed insanely as the thing to do, right? Magic Cons happen. The pandemic sort of ends, and pandemic Magic Cons happen. We get invited out to Magic Cons, and I'm completely disillusioned by what's going on at Magic Cons, because there's no competitive play at Magic Cons. It's just people sitting together and playing Magic casually, which is fine, but that's what you did at a Grand Prix without paying for the Grand Prix. Why, like, what are we doing now, right? Like, so the Magic Cons created like this other Dark Night moment for me, where I was like, there's nothing here for me. Maybe this game, there's nothing here for me as well, right? And so then, you know, then we get like Modern Horizons 2, Modern Horizons 3, you know, they're coming faster. Is you know, at the end of the day, what I think this episode is about is that the Dark Knight moments are coming faster, right? Like it was like 1999, a Dark Knight of my own making. 2008, a Dark Knight that I was like, this game is a bit cringe, but like, we'll see what happens. Then it was like my LGS closed, Standard, Modern, Commander, Pioneer dies, Grand Prix die. You know, like it just like they just are coming so much faster. These Dark Knight moments for players who have been entrenched in the game keep coming harder and faster. And now we have another Dark Knight moment with Universes Beyond. And like I said, you know, not to make this a rant about Universes Beyond, but they keep saying, Phil, you never are a fan of Universes Beyond until your thing gets mentioned. And you know what? I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was 10 when the Turtles movie came out. I bought a Raphael before the cartoon came out, right? I had the Eastman and Laird comics. I don't care about Ninja Turtles in my Magic the Gathering game. I don't think that's necessary. I don't really want them. I don't want real world stuff in my Magic the Gathering thing. I don't want to see New York in my Magic the Gathering games. I just don't like it. And I'm at another Dark Knight moment, Phil. And I'm going to keep playing. You know, we're going to keep trudging along. I'm not stopping. Maybe I'm playing in spite of the people creating this stuff. I don't know. But I don't foresee myself stopping anytime soon. I've weathered several Dark Knight moments. I'll probably weather several more. This is an interesting topic to think about, as like something we come back to yearly and talk about how many Dark Knight moments have you had in the last year.
Yeah,
I think our Dark Knight moments at like Pioneer start to line up. They're kind of the same at that point, right? People that have been playing the game for more than 10 years, they're just experiencing together like a mass Dark Knight moment happens for all of us at the same time.
I also think that there was a moment that was like that right before the pandemic, which was when they introduced fire design, and there was like the whole issue with that, which was essentially like a euphemism for we're going to start power creeping really aggressively. And it was Fire Design, which was Thrones of Eldraine, right into War of the Spark and like all of that. And I remember War of the Spark being like, there are a couple of sets historically that I think were like the paradigm shifters for the game. Like, I think Innistrad was one of those. Like, if you think about Innistrad for Legacy, it introduced Griselbrand, Delveros, Seeka, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, Past in Flames, Miracles. Like, that was just like that block was like a huge, not that any of this stuff was power crept, but like it sort of just defined the era that we came to know as like what Legacy was. Like, Innistrad block's influence was really, really deep. And then like you had pieces come along throughout, but then it wasn't until Fire Design where I think there really was like another radical shift. And it was really War of the Spark that I think was the like clear cut sign where it was just like a bunch of these planeswalkers that were all asymmetrical effects that all did really broken things that weren't fun. And it was at the time when they were also pushing Arena Best of One. And so you could tell a lot of their designs.
The enshittification of the game, you know? Yeah.
If you only have one game, what do you do? And so like there was like a ton more things like Karn the Great Creator that like just introduced like wishes to the game, and cards just just like incidentally tacking on like a bunch of effects that otherwise you needed to like think about and allocate cards to. So it was like, yeah, this card just also happens to like destroy an enchantment, whatever. Like in addition to what it already does, because you might not have access to your sideboard cards, and we want people to be able to enjoy Best of One. And so like once we hit that era, I was like, oh, that is also a very clear shift where like cards would just, whatever they were, they pulled 2 mana off of it, powered it up a little bit further, and then pushed it to print. And then that just like obsoleted a bunch of things. And I remember that being a shift of like, I feel like I don't know what's going on anymore, in that like all of the expectations that I had for like the system that we have been playing in for, 2 decades it has just been like overhauled to where it's like, yeah, now it's just vibes. Now we're just going off of, we're just letting players always have something to do, because once we introduced the digital clients, we couldn't let players not have something to do. We couldn't let tension build. If there was a moment where a player couldn't do something with their mana, or couldn't draw a card, or didn't have cards in their hand, they would just go do something else. And we need to make sure that they have that. And so like that was also an era where there was a Dark Knight where I was like, do we really want to be playing against Teferi, Narset, Karn every round? Like that's what it was at the time. And it was like, this is abysmal. And then now we're in present day coming out. I said it last time. Thank God Pre-Modern's picked up. I'm hoping that Aaron Forsyth liked your legacy curation. Post.
We need that's a big bucket for us, talking about curation of the game, curation of the legacy format, curation period, like curation of everything that has to do with this game. I hope that they increase the quality of the curation. I think that's super important.
Talking through this and seeing how many of the major shifts that WotC has had, it'll probably be a year or two. But I think like all of the feedback they're getting about how much everybody doesn't like all of the everything is just going to be legends, and legends matter, and everything's a commander, and everything is 5-color because why not? Because you want to be able to build your commander decks and whatever. And like now it's in 1v1, and people don't want that because clearly these are commander products that are just being funneled into 1v1. Do you guys even care about 1v1 anymore? Like all of that feedback that they're getting, I think they will have to hear that and then figure out how, if they want to support 1v1 at all, how they have to shift that. And you saying that like the Morrow's Dark Knight was the having to accept commander as the main way that people play the game now.
It's heartening to hear, honestly.
Like him having him going through that. Now, granted, like he loves all of the commander stuff of like, doubling effects and counters and the things that I find to be like, rancid. But like if he had a Dark Knight to come to Jesus with that moment, like seeing Forsyth like your thing, like maybe there is a time down the road where they're like, we understand that we have not figured out how to do this clearly, and we are going to put more resources into trying to balance the pendulum a little bit, because we went so hard in one direction.
Hopefully the pendulum swings back. I get that it's currently swinging away from us. Maybe it will swing back toward us soon.
Yeah,
but Phil,
yeah,
we've gone on too long about this.
Too long. Our next Dark Knight would be if we continued talking anymore.
But with that said, what do you think? Tell me about your Dark Knight moments in the comments. Hey, if you want to have us keep railing about topics like this that we think are important, especially to us old head Magic players, don't forget to hit us up on Patreon, where you can get all of this content ad-free. You're getting an extra episode of content every week, and you're getting all of our extra guides for pre-modern and stuff like that as well. Thank you for watching, and we will catch you on the flip. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help sustain the legacy content ecosystem. Just subscribing to this channel goes a long way. to reminding YouTube that people love and support this format. Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you should think about supporting us through Patreon. Both the links for subscription and Patreon are right here. And if you're listening on an audio format, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles. Thanks so much for watching.